All right, guys, welcome to the show. You gotta say it at the same time, dude. The
Okay. The
show.
show.
You guys know that Gary Vee right there. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm live with the man right here, Andrew, and
Yes.
we're gonna be talking some cool stuff right now about why audio content, and this is what I've been telling you guys, like it's dominating right now, and it's gonna be
Whoops.
like it's an upward trend, right, Andrew?
Definitely. Sorry, I'm trying to share. I'm trying to share the post on my page real
Yeah,
fast.
go for it, go for it, go for it.
I'm gonna
And if you guys
say
are on Andrew's shared
live
post,
right now.
show some love. Tag Andrew. If you're on the replay, give me hashtag replay.
What's up,
You
replay
guys are
squad?
live. Drop some questions if you guys are live. I'm
All
pretty
right.
sure I'm live in my group too. So
All right, I've
you need
got
that.
your 100% attention. Yes. So you're saying audio content is kind of on the up and up, which I totally agree. And we can obviously dive into that super deep. But I think like right now, audio content is amazing because people want to be like multitasking and they want to be productive and stuff. And they want to be able to be learning while they're driving or learning while they're cooking or learning while they're cleaning or whatever. And podcasts and like audiobooks are a huge way to be able to do that.
Cool. So quick backstory. I recently interviewed Ryan Helms last week. And he's a super, like, he's a stud. Like I was like, that's why, like, so for the past 3 years, I was doing my own agency work, but I was behind the scenes just working with clients and podcasting agency. And it wasn't until a few months ago where I was like, because the agency model is like in podcasting, they're like living 2015. They do things the old way. They're not experimenting with new things. And I was like, I got to start a new thing, my own agency. And I got to learn from people like you and people like Ryan who are like crushing it with new methods and who are like doing all these things that I think are more important, you know, for like the future of podcasting. So picking his brain and now picking your brain, that's how I got into this world. He told me about you. I listened to your podcast and I was kind of blown away because you actually, you practice what you preach. You tell people like first impressions are super important. And the first impression I got from your show, I was getting bombarded with like uniqueness. I was like, this guy's putting out freshness right now. Like everything from like how you ended the episodes. Like I picked up some techniques. Like how at the end of the episode, you're like, all right, if you like this episode, check out episode 68 and 97 where we talk about blah, blah. And I was like, whoa, this guy's getting me addicted.
Yeah.
So,
dude, that technique is pretty clever. Sorry, repeat that. I was talking over you. My bad.
Like, what was your like when you first started your podcast, what was like your goal, your vision?
So that's a great question. So in the beginning, I was really just a huge podcast fan. You know, obviously, guys like Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, Gary Vaynerchuk. I was listening to a lot of their content, very like inspirational, kind of entrepreneurial theme, kind of, you know, but I was very into that and I was, you know, consuming a lot of podcasts. I think that's a big thing that a lot of people miss is they think, oh, I got to start my own podcast, but they don't even actually listen to any. So they don't have anything to like, they don't have anything to kind of shoot for. So I was really trying to kind of emulate those guys because I saw them, they were putting out awesome content and they were having conversations with really cool people. Like that was the biggest thing with Joe and Tim. Like they were getting to have conversations with like the coolest people on earth. And arguably like all they really do to like keep up their fame is kind of just like keep doing what they're doing and just kind of keep the show afloat. Like at that point, they'd already built it to such a level. They already had an audience. And so, you know, people wanted to come. So that was kind of my vision, but I never actually executed on it until one of my friends invited me to be on his podcast. And I saw how easy it was. Granted, there were some things that I saw him do that I thought I could do that better. I could do that more efficiently, you know, things like that. And about a month later, I launched my podcast, which is pretty crazy. So I just went ham after that. But yeah, the vision was conversations. That was the main thing. Conversations and letting people tell their story. Like, I see this guy and this is how he is now, or this, you know, I see Andrew and he's got a dope ass podcast, but like, how did he get to that point? Like, what were the steps and what was your mindset from the beginning, you know?
Yeah. All right. We got a few questions in here. All right. I'll answer that a little bit later, Pablo, but thanks for the question. Because it's more tactical. I want to get more into the story of Andrew right now. William, what's up, dude? Kyle, hello, Poppet. I don't know what that means.
Hello, Poppet.
What does that mean, dude?
I don't know, but Kyle's my homie. So what's up, Kyle?
Oh, okay. Got you. You got the squad in here.
Yes.
So it's funny that you said that because I feel like me and a lot of people, like Joe Rogan was like the first kind of like entryway. He kind of like shook things up. And even now, he's still like, peaking. Like, did you see his last episode?
Man, dude, I watched it last night. I was up all night watching. I fell asleep watching it, and then I
Dude, I
listened.
was watching it this morning. Dude, it was like, it's insane how he can get people to be so comfortable and like drop all their like things that are happening in their life and just like create a new experience in his show. Like Elon Musk, that interview is going to exist for hundreds of years. I'm pretty sure.
Dude, the
like,
internet
when we're all
blew
gone
up over that.
Yeah. I think it was pretty awesome how he did it. If you guys haven't checked it out, check out the last episode of Joe Rogan with Elon Musk. It was pretty awesome. But I think something that's cool about your podcast is how there's a lot of congruency between like your social media and how you talk and just your whole entire vibe. Was that like intentional? Because I know you have like an artist background and you're like very creative. I can tell.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is I feel like I tend to I realized this term recently. It was like maybe like a year ago, is imposter syndrome. I always like felt that, but I didn't really know what it was. I couldn't put a term to it. So for people who don't know, imposter syndrome is like the constant worrying that like you're going to be found out as a fraud. Like, oh, I'm trying to be a podcaster, but really I don't know shit about podcasting. So like in reality, no one should be even listening to my show. But like on the front end, I'm like this cool podcast guy, and the same thing goes for like Photoshop or whatever. I've never taken a real Photoshop class in my life, except for in high school. I took a class for Photoshop. It was like graphic arts for one semester, but like I can, sell my graphic services to people who have no idea of that, or even video editing. Like I just taught myself. And so a lot of it is just kind of being self-taught and being authentic to myself. I think, like you said, there's kind of congruency between all my social medias, and I think that comes from me having an appreciation for people being genuine and authentic. That's like again a thing that I love about Joe Rogan. He constantly stresses the fact that no one's telling him what to say. He doesn't have any like giant corporations behind him like feeding stuff into his ear. Like he does whatever the fuck he wants. And I mean, like you saw it on the podcast with Elon Musk, and that's why it's so viral and addictive.
He gives that space for his guests to do the same too, which is awesome.
Exactly. Like there's no place on earth where that type of conversation would have ever existed. A long form 3-hour conversation between like two guys like that. Like it's such a unique thing. And that's like the type of authenticity that I want to cultivate within my audience as well. So I think that the congruency is just from me trying to be myself and trying to be authentic.
Gotcha. William says we're posers. Yeah, that's true, dude. It's funny because I experienced that too, like imposter syndrome. But in my mind, the way I kind of like flip it to positivity is like, a lot of people feel this, and this is where they'll stop. But this is where I'm going to keep going, and that's how I'm going to like, differentiate myself. So
true. And another thing is is I think what helps me is going and seeking out people that are making more money than me, that are doing, I know they're doing a worse job than me, like finding podcasts that are actually like lucrative and they're really big and they've been going for a while and like they don't sound that great. Cause I'm like, damn, well, if this guy can do it and like he has an audience and his audio doesn't even sound good, like, then I have like so much faith, and same goes for, my friend Morgan Ingram, I think he actually said it during the podcast I did with him. He said something like, if one or two people like resonate with your content in the beginning, like a lot of people will eventually resonate with it. It's just that you haven't reached those people yet. Like you haven't gotten enough of a reach yet, so that, there are people that are going to like your shit. You've just got to keep going,
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. Like there's some people that I've managed their podcast behind the scenes, super boring people, like health insurance, like dentist. They're making cash, guys. And like they're doing like phone call, like dial up type calls, and like, but they're making tons of cash.
Hey, I mean, there's a niche for everything. There's an audience for everything. I mean, people listen to boring shit all the time. I mean, like NPR is super huge. Like whatever your flavor is, whatever you like there's something for everybody. That's I think that's where I think a lot of people go wrong. And we can kind of talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, I just think like there's no such thing as like boring content as long as some people are into it. Like, someone's interested somewhere, and what's boring to you might not be boring to me or whatever.
Yep. It's more context, not content in a way. Anthony says, Andrew is the definition of authenticity. Muscles. Nice, dude.
Dude, I can't see the comments. How do I look at them? I just click see all.
Are you on B Live?
Yeah, Andrew's the definition of authenticity. What up, Anthony? Anthony was actually a guest on my podcast too. Anthony's the shit. We
Dude,
had
so
a super authentic
I
podcast.
want to talk about that real quick. Like, you've had some people on your podcast, like, you think they don't even exist in real life. Like, you don't even hear about them. But they're
Right?
like the status they have and like what they've accomplished. Like, can you go like, how do you find these people? Like,
Dude,
how do you do this?
So there's a lot of different ways. I pride myself. That was one of the biggest things too. Is like I felt like from the beginning, I had a network of a lot of really cool people because I do a lot of weird things. You know, like I'm into a lot of stuff. I've ingrained myself in a few like little kind of weird niche communities and stuff. So there's always, and I travel a lot. So I've always like had a knack for connecting with like interesting people, but I never had a way to really like showcase that because being a good networker and being a good connector is sometimes hard to like showcase, without seeming braggy or like, look at all the cool friends I have and look at all these cool connections I've made. It seems kind of fake. But if you're actually like shedding the spotlight on them and like making the show about them rather than like, look at me and my cool friends, it's like, look at this guy and all the cool stuff that he does, then it seems more authentic, seems more real, and like makes it cooler. But in a non-podcast sense, like the way that I find these people, a lot of them from the beginning were just my straight up friends, still are. And then also like some creative ways, like people have reached out to me, like people have recommended like, yo, I think you'd be really good on this guy's show. Check him out, or things like that. Also another place that I've met a couple of people, there's some apps even like Bumble Biz. Like it seems weird at first,
Bumble
but it's like,
Biz, okay. I thought that was
so like Bumble is a dating app, but there's a section of it called Bumble Biz that's like for networking. And I only used it because I actually had a successful similar interaction on a similar app. Is basically Bumble Biz copied this app. It's called Shaper. And it's basically like LinkedIn mixed with Tinder, where you basically can like swipe right and left and like meet people. And so like I actually met one of my most interesting guests and actually someone that I work with now. Her name's Hillary Billings. And she was like former Miss Nevada. She had like traveled for a whole year. She was like a journalist. Like she was like super interesting. And I matched with her on Shaper. And she was in Atlanta for a night. And we met up in her hotel room, which sounds super weird. But we met up in her hotel room and recorded a podcast. We didn't.
You said Shaper.
Yeah,
Is that
Shaper.
what
It was called SHAPR. So it had to have some sort of funky name. All apps always have some sort of funky spelling or something like that. But yeah, it was Shaper. Shaper.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think it's pronounced Shaper. I don't know. That's how I say it. And Bumble Biz. And I've only met that one. I've only met like a couple people on Shaper. I actually met a lady who was a CEO of like a VR firm, like a virtual reality firm, and I did a really cool podcast with her on Shaper. And then Bumble Biz, I met a guy who was actually on my 2 podcasts ago. He has another podcast. It's like a mystery fiction podcast. They're very different than mine, but that was like a super cool one too. So yeah, those are some like kind of weird ways, but ways that have ended up working for me. I haven't gone on there in a while, but
Yeah, while we're on the topic of weird names, let people know how to pronounce your last name.
Yes, Andrew Deitch. And actually it's kind of funny because it's kind of like, people, Gary Vaynerchuk, that's like a household name now, but like in the beginning, no one knew how the hell to say his name. And so that was one of my biggest concerns when I was starting my show, because my show is literally just called the Andrew Deitch Podcast. Yeah. And so I was kind of worried. Oh, what up, Ashlyn? Another guest from the podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, so my name is like very unique. And so for SEO purposes and unique purposes, it kind of works out. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure you didn't have to like buy your domain from someone.
Yeah, I didn't have to buy my domain, but funny enough, there's like a kid I think he lives in Canada that his name's Andrew Deitch. And when I was younger, I used stupid usernames on everything. So he snatched up all the like at Andrew Deitches. So I'm like Andrew _Deitch or like dumb stuff. So maybe I'll have to buy him out one day.
Ever since Arnold Schwarzenegger got big, there's no excuses to not use your name anymore, guys. Like if people could say like, remember Arnold Schwarzenegger, like you can use any name you want.
Exactly. Like, what's in a name? A name is stupid anyways. Like think about how dumb the name Facebook is. It's like the simplest, dumbest name. Like it's a book of faces. Like it's just so stupid, but it worked. Like, Snapchat, like, that's actually kind of a fun one, but it doesn't mean anything until it means something. Like there's some app now that like a lot of Instagram guys and like vloggers and stuff are promoting called like Cheese, like the Cheese app or something like that. And it sounds dumb, but like maybe it'll get big and then maybe Cheese will be like a household name, like, yo, cheese me or whatever. Like, I don't know, but the name doesn't really mean anything until we put meaning to it. So
yeah, we brand the names. We got a few questions here, dude. So let's zip through it before we go into the interview. Pablo asked, what's your criteria what criteria do you use for getting people on your podcast?
That's a great question. So a lot of people have a much more niche podcast than mine. So it can be very different from my show. So in the beginning, honestly, I just wanted to put out episodes and establish myself. Like I really wanted to Ashlyn said bird is becoming a verb now.
Is that
So
the
like
scooters?
yeah,
That's
like
the scooters,
like
right?
oh yeah, we're gonna go birding. Like it, bird used to mean just a freaking animal, but now it means like a scooter, so same thing. Lime too, like, oh, grab a lime. Like no one knew what that meant like 12 months ago. But anyways, the vetting process. So like, for example, Ashlyn, actually, she was my second guest ever on the podcast. She's one of my longtime friends. And like, she was in the fitness community.
I think I heard one of your last podcasts with Chad where you mentioned her.
Yeah. Yes. So Chad is Ashlyn's boyfriend.
Wow.
And crazy. Yeah, so it's crazy, right? And they live out in California. They just moved to Venice. Definitely visiting them soon. Ashlyn says she's literally always birding around. Like I'm birding around because she lives in Venice now, so she doesn't need a car or anything. But yeah, so like for example, Ashlyn, she was in like the fitness community. I like hearing about fitness stuff and hearing people's transformation stories, and she also like did some solo traveling and stuff like that. So it seemed right up my alley from my show. So I was just like, cool. Like I'm gonna ask her to be on the podcast. Like there was some other people in the beginning that were like entrepreneurs. I really wanted to talk to more entrepreneurs, so I asked them to be on the podcast. The vetting process is more just like if I feel like I have a genuine connection with that person, I know we'll have a great podcast regardless of if they have any kind of social following or whether it's going to like up my clout or whatever and make my podcast cooler because they were on it. If I feel like it's going to be really forced and I feel like the conversation is simply them trying to use me and they don't actually care about me or my show, then I'm very turned off. Like I get a lot of emails that are like, yo, I'd be a perfect guest for your show. And then just based on a couple of recommendations or based on a couple of, exchanges that I have with them, they don't even know anything about my show. They're probably just going through Instagram, emailing every single person with the name podcast, So it's like, that's a big thing is whether you can tell that they're trying to be authentic and they are trying to live their truth as well. Like that's a big thing for me.
Yeah. And this is something that I do too. Like whenever I want to kind of have a relationship with someone or, because it's kind of, you have to have a relationship with someone to have on your podcast or do anything, business. I consume all their stuff because I want to know about them, So
yeah. And actually, I was going to say, Raul, he just commented. He was the guy that I met on Bumble Biz. I was just talking about Bumble Biz.
Oh,
he was the guy who I just did 2 podcasts ago who has the fiction podcast, Rose Drive. And I met him on Bumble Biz. Super random, super kind of weird, honestly. But it worked. And it ended up being a way that I met somebody really cool. And now we have this awesome relationship. And
the Bird Squad here, by the way.
Yeah, we got the Bird Squad, dude. Bird Squad. I love the Bird Squad.
I need those in Florida, I guess, now.
Dude, birds are awesome. Like they're super effective. I really love the idea of like community ownership, like why do all of us need to own a wrench when I use it, maybe one day out of the year? What if I had like a neighborhood toolkit that via some app we would all let each other know when we were using certain tools or something like that? You know what I mean? I love that idea. Of like kind of community ownership.
Yeah, I think that's why Uber blew up too. It's like, taking advantage of the resources we already have,
Yeah, this is like a commercial for Bumble Biz. Goddamn, they need to sponsor this. But
so we got a question. How do you go about getting sponsors? I'm gonna send Bumble Biz this video, and then I got a sponsor. No, how do you do this, dude?
So actually, I've only had one official sponsor for the podcast, and it was one of my friends. She just reached out to me and said. That she said, hey, how do I become a sponsor on your show? And so that was kind of dope. It just kind of appeared out of nowhere. So honestly, I haven't had like super crazy experiences like reaching out to brands or anything. I kind of had it in my head that I wanted to get to 100 episodes before I really started going hard with that, just to like establish myself. It's kind of just like a milestone in my brain that I wanted to get to. But I think the main thing about sponsors is they really have to resonate with you and your audience. And like my audience is pretty broad, but it's, it's generally like young people that are like entrepreneurial minded. Maybe they're, health conscious, fitness conscious. They like to travel. They like to, do kind of things out of the box, that sort of stuff. So if there was a brand like, some sort of, travel thing or something like that, I feel like a lot of people would be interested, or a certain kind of like health related thing. A lot of people would be interested. So I think it has to relate obviously to your audience, and also has to be true to you. You know, I'm a big believer in, if you're going to read their ads, you should also probably believe in their products and stuff too. Like, be a user of them, be an advocate, because I'm a really big believer in like going all in. So if I'm going to have a sponsor of my show, like I should actually stand behind it, not just like be a puppet that's going to just say whatever they want me to say.
Yeah. I mean, I was a client I used to work for. She had a podcast. It was for people with diabetes, and she literally got Splenda as a sponsor. And I was like, what are you doing? Like I don't know, like they were trying to, I guess, flip the audience.
That's funny.
But so before we get into this question right here that Alice asked, that's pretty technical.
Did I finish answering the one question from Pablo? Yeah. I was trying to say, the criteria. Yeah, that was pretty much my criteria. Is like mainly, just make sure that I'm going to be able to have a good conversation, that I like them. Anyways, sorry. I just want to make sure I was getting everybody.
Yeah. We're getting loaded up here, dude.
Beat us. Oh my God.
Brett Cole, real quick before I get into this question, I see that you're blowing up with your gifts, dude. Like, what's going on here?
Dude,
what's going on here?
That is a thing that is like a crazy thing that just popped up in the past 12 days. So this is something that I'm a big believer in, like, you know, creating weird stuff and like trying to ingrain myself into like almost like the meme culture. You know what I mean? But I think that like the meme culture and stuff, it's almost like a giant inside joke. And when someone makes an inside joke, you automatically resonate with them. So like the other day, I actually did a sponsored Facebook or sponsored Instagram ad for this that's running right now, and I'll see how it performs. But I did one of those like Colin Kaepernick like Nike memes, but it was my face, and it's like, listen to my podcast, even if it means that you have to stop listening to your favorite podcast or something like that. And it's an ad, yeah. And so it looks like the Colin Kaepernick face thing is pretty funny. I thought it was clever. I cracked up at myself. I laugh at my own jokes all the time. But anyways,
the gift game, dude.
Yeah, killing the gift game. But anyway, so the gift thing was like me looking at Instagram and seeing, like, you know, I search in the word podcast on GIFs, like, because on Instagram stories you can add GIFs to your stories to make them look more exciting or whatever. And I would search in the term podcast, and like, you know, Gary Vee was up there, Grant Cardone was up there, you know, a couple of other podcasts, they had their own GIFs. And I was like, you know, I've actually heard Gary talking about GIFs for a while, and you know, I never got that into it. I'd never even made a GIF before. I knew how, but like I didn't really try it. And I was like, well, this is almost kind of like owning the word, like Gary talks about this, like owning the word wine on AdWords back in the day. It was so easy. It was like 1 cent per click because no one knew what it was. So if you search in podcast on the GIF search on Instagram, there's only like a handful, you know, there's only like maybe 50 or so. And I thought, well, if I can make GIFs of my podcast thing, people might not even use it because I'm probably just going to use them, but they'll see my name and it gives me some sort of like almost legitimacy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because if Gary Vee and Grant Cardone and like a few others are the only people that have GIFs, and a couple other like shitty ones, I didn't even, you know, they look so dumb that I'm like, it's almost like a negative connotation. Like it's like a bad first impression. And so I was like, okay, well, how do I get my GIFs on there? Long story short, you basically have to apply to become a verified GIF creator on Giphy. And then once you do that, because all of the GIFs are hand selected on Instagram and Snapchat, because they're actually called GIF stickers, which means they have to have some sort of transparency around the outside. Like it's not just a square with like something happening like a normal GIF. It's like transparent, and it's almost like a cutout sticker of what's going on, what's being animated. So they actually hand select those. So that's why you have to be verified. So anyways, basically, long story short, I applied like a few weeks ago, and I kind of forgot about it, to be honest. And then the other day I got the email saying I was verified. I'm like, cool, let's start making some GIFs. And it blew the fuck up, like blew up so hard. I think right now my GIF page, my total GIF views is almost 2 million views. 2 million. Wow. And that's not on like one certain GIF or anything. It's spread across 35 GIFs that I've uploaded, but they're not all mine either. Like I've actually even had people paying me to make GIFs for them because, you know, you type in the word flex or something like that, and you're gonna yeah, Kyle, long story longer. You type in the word flex, you might get like a couple people flexing, but there might not be any girls. So like my friend Umama, she's like a fitness influencer. When you type in flex, now there's a picture of her flexing, and she's looking at her muscle and is flexing, and it's been viewed like 250,000 times in 3 days. Like, it's absolutely nuts. So it's almost like this weird little marketplace where you can get people to start using your gifts, and you can kind of get exposure and stuff. So anyways, that was, again, long story longer, but that's the gift thing.
Question about that, actually. What's up, Olivia? If you guys are on live, give me a hashtag team live. I want to see who's on live. I can't really see
what
right
up, team
now.
Live?
Team live, guys. You know the drill. Dude, so I literally searched podcasts. I don't know if I could show this on Instagram. Dude, look at your face.
I'm right at the top, and you know what's even crazier?
Other top 15, ones, you have like 4 or 5.
And the other top ones are ones that I've created for my friends that have podcasts. So like, I even made those too.
All right, that's so my
like
homework
all of those are my gifts. So all like literally, and I think it might even be sorted by upload date, which is kind of funny. Like, they want to keep things fresh on their platform. So when you're typing in new gifts, they want the newer ones to pop up at the top, because that probably means, you know, like, it's a GIF you haven't seen before. Because if you're posting the same GIFs all the time, it's kind of boring, right? So I think that actually a lot of those GIFs, like the Gary Vee ones, are kind of at the bottom because he hasn't made any in a while. And mine are like at the top because it seems like I'm the only one really making GIFs for that little niche.
We got some team vibes.
I was kind of mad that I made some for the other guys, because I'm like, damn, now they're taking my top spots.
You put your logo like on the corner of their GIF, so it's like you
exactly. Yeah, exactly. The gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. Dude, you should create. Okay, let's not get too into this rabbit hole.
Seriously though, I'm so into it right now, and I've turned it into a little side hustle
right now too, dude. You just blew my mind.
Yeah, turned it into a little side hustle. So if you want custom gifts, hit me in the DMs.
Dude, so Giphy, is that utilized anywhere else? Like, does Facebook utilize that for gifts? Or
yeah, so the interesting thing, so when you search like Facebook for gifts, they're all the square ones. Like, they don't pull gift stickers. So like when you post something on Facebook, it's going to be like a square with something animated in the middle. There's no transparency. And on like Instagram and Snapchat, they actually did an exclusive partnership with Giphy. So the only way to get your custom like GIF stickers onto Instagram or Snapchat is to go through Giphy, and they actually have to be hand selected by an employee. Because like during Labor Day weekend, I uploaded some GIFs on like Friday, and they didn't pop up until the next Tuesday, because like literally the Instagram staff or the Giphy staff or whoever is in charge of that like wasn't working. So it's kind of funny. Like, once you upload it, they'll upload to be like, they might be uploaded the next day, because someone has to like manually select them, because they were actually having a problem with some racist GIFs that were popping up, because I don't think they were vetting them. So now they're like making sure that like every GIF sticker that goes through their platform is being heavily vetted, so that people aren't just uploading like racist stuff or vulgar stuff or whatever. You know?
Yeah, you don't want dildo GIFs everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, they'll still allow some stuff like that, but like I think it's more of the racist thing. Like, there was a really bad one that had like the N-word, and like, you know, just, it was not good. And so, and people were mad at Instagram saying, how could you allow this to be on your platform? But yeah, Ryan says Giphy.
Yo, Ryan, your profile picture is completely Giphy, dude.
we need to make a GIF of Ryan like laughing or something like that.
Yes, please. Dude, we should make a GIF of Ryan's beard just like extending forever.
That would be amazing. I love that. That would be great.
So
we get on the hashtag beard.
Can you repeat how you create those GIFs? So is there a certain software you're using for that?
I'm Adobe gang for everything, yo. Like, I use Adobe products for all of my creative endeavors. So whether it's editing my podcast, whether it's making GIFs, whether it's making videos, whether it's editing my photos, I'm looking at my screen right now. At the bottom, like, applications are Photoshop, Audition, Premiere, After Effects, and Lightroom. Like, those are my freaking jam. So Photoshop. Yeah, so Photoshop is how I make my GIFs. And there's a lot of YouTube videos explaining it, so I won't go into like super deep detail, but there's actually ways you can create GIFs on Photoshop.
Yeah, the only thing I'm not a big fan of Premiere. I don't like the UI of it. But then again, I'm not a video guy, so I'm an audio guy. So let me see if I miss. So
do you use Audition though?
I love Audition, dude. It's open right now. It's recording my voice right now.
Here we go.
I use Audition, and then sometimes when I'm actually creating like intros and outros, I use FL Studio for like special plugins and stuff and effects. So let me scroll down a little bit. I remember there was this question just so we can get pretty into Value Town right now.
I love that, dude. We're going deep into Value Town.
What are the main steps to launch a successful podcast like yours?
Ooh,
so
that is
this could be like a 3-hour question. So let's just kind of condense it.
Yeah. So actually, I have like a little quick system that I've kind of came up with when I was writing an article. Like a while ago, someone was like interviewing me for this thing, and I kind of came up with this thing. I actually shared it on Ryan Helms. Ryan Helms, another guest from my podcast, and then I was on his podcast. And yes, the 3 L's exactly. And that was the title of Ryan's podcast that he did with me, is the 3 L's of podcasting, and those would be longevity, launch, and wow, I literally just looked at the screen and I lost it. Longevity, launch, and listenability. So basically, like, the launch is super important because you have to make a great first impression. You can never remake a first impression. So like I said, kind of with the GIF thing, if you're looking at some shitty GIFs and it's representing some other podcast, like, I'm going to think, well, if their GIFs are shitty, their audio quality probably sucks too, or whatever. Or, if, I'm looking at your podcast page and it looks like trash, it is trash to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even want to listen to it. So the launch is super important, and you got to have super high quality promos to get an audience. Because if you don't have, you're competing with people like, the Joe Rogans and the Tim Ferrisses and the Gary V's and all those guys of the world that have a team behind them. And so if I have 2 hours of my day to spend listening to a podcast, why the hell would I listen to yours instead of one of theirs? Because probably theirs is better. You know what I mean? Like, we only have limited time. And so unless, so the launch is super important. The next one is listenability, which I kind of touched on, which would be making sure your audio quality is on point. But not only that, like, there's a level of diminishing returns. I'm not saying you have to go out and buy a $400 microphone for your first episode. My podcasting setup is very basic to this day. I use some pretty cheap Amazon lavalier mics that I got, and they've been working ever since. I had one conk out on me, but I got another one for super cheap again. After 90 episodes or whatever, I can't blame it. But listenability. But the other thing that ties into listenability is actually being listenable for a long period of time. Like, if you're boring as shit and your content sucks, no one wants to listen anyways. So there you got to kind of self-audit yourself. You can't really, everyone wants to think that they're awesome, but you've also got to figure out ways you can improve. I'm constantly trying to re-listen to my podcast and see how I can be less annoying or be less interruptive or say less or say less or whatever it is. And so, yeah, just kind of working on your craft. And then that last one, which is, what did I say? Launch, listenability, and longevity. Yeah. Longevity. If I'm going to get into a podcast, or I'm going to get into, let's say, a Netflix show and there's only one season, I don't even want to watch it because they didn't get renewed. You know what I mean? Unless it's ongoing and it came out this year, I don't want to watch it because it's okay, this wasn't even good enough for 2 seasons. You know what I mean? And I'm not that big of a Netflix guy, but the same parallel could be made for a podcast. If I see, I keep saying it, but Joe Rogan, he has over 1,100 episodes. Obviously he's got something happening there, or else he would have quit a long time ago, And so that longevity, you got to have the appearance of longevity even when you don't have it. And so for me, that was launching as many episodes as I humanly could in the first, Ryan said it, people window shop and look for consistency. If they can tell that, you started off strong and then now you're fizzling out super hard, or, you've uploaded one episode and it's been, a month, that's just not cool, man. People want to get invested in your show. It's kind of like reading a book, people don't pick up a book to read the first 5 pages. They want to read the whole thing. So, you got to make content that appears that it has that longevity, that you're going to stand the test of time. And that also comes down to your willpower. How bad actually do you want to have a podcast? Because if it's just something that you're going to try out for a little while, I hate to say it, but don't even bother, because people want to listen to a show consistently. And unless you're very explicit as far as okay, we're going to do season 1 and then I'm going to work really hard and we're going to come out with season 2 or whatever, you got to be explicit with that. But, people can tell when you're kind of bullshitting.
Yeah. So how I would kind of put some words to it. So longevity, it's almost like a relationship, because when you listen to a podcast, you're kind of forming a relationship with them, virtually, they're kind of in your head. So also for launch, you said if there's something in there you feel like it's giving you a bad vibe, you're gonna say fuck this podcast. That's where congruency matters, making sure everything is aligned, your messages everywhere. And for listenability, I don't know if you heard the book by Russell Brunson called Expert Secrets.
I haven't read it, but I'm familiar
but he
with
talks about like to be an expert, you got to have an attractive character and all the elements important like you need for an attractive character, like how you tell stories, how you tell parables, how you throw rocks at people, like all those. So guys, that book's really good.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, it's a really good book. People window. All right, Ryan, what's up, dude? Give us a team live if you're still here, guys. How long?
I also want to rant a little bit more on that a little bit later, but I think we can kind of save it to the end because it's kind of I know I'm gonna veer off a little bit from those main things, but I have some thoughts that like a lot of people in the podcast industry are not keen on. You know what I mean?
Let's go. I want to hear this, bro. Give me some exclusive stuff. Give me some headline stuff, dude.
Okay, so I was thinking about this earlier. So take everything you know about podcasting and throw it in the trash for a second. Okay, so podcasts, like the word podcast, just like earlier we said, it's all in a name. Whatever you think of when you think of the word podcast is something different than what I think of when I think of the word podcast. And so we need to stop saying things like the ideal length for a podcast is blah, 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 blah. The ideal blah, blah, blah for a podcast is blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, dude, like a podcast just has to be good and have an audience. Like you don't have to follow what everyone else is doing, because if you actually do follow what everyone else is doing, your podcast is going to be basic as fuck and no one's going to want to listen to it because there's probably another podcast that's the same as yours, but better, you know? And so, like I said, like take everything you know about podcasting and throw it in the garbage, because people will tell you like, you can't have a successful podcast that is blank. You can't, you got to do this if you're going to have a podcast. You got to do this. You've got to, for me, I listened to a lot of podcasts and I knew what I liked. And I knew that I was my ideal listener for those types of podcasts. So what kind of podcast do I want to create? I don't want a podcast where I have to feel fake and forced and inauthentic and, trying to schmooze up with some people. So I'm not going to make a podcast like that, And so if you are dreading parts of podcasting that, you feel like obligated to do, take a big giant step back and be like, wait a second, do I actually have to do this? Or do I feel like I have to do this because it's what everyone else is doing? The biggest thing I hear all the time now is like the ideal podcast length is 20 to 22 minutes because it's the length of the average American's commute. And so you'll wrap up your whole message within that. And it's the best way to send a message, which I agree with to a point. For example, TED Talks, they're about, 10 to 20 minutes long typically. And they're a great way to sell your point, to explain it quickly, efficiently, and get the idea in somebody's head. I agree with that. But people don't write books that are 5 pages long because it's the easiest way to digest information. Like books are long as fuck. Why? Because sometimes you have to unpack a subject. And if you want to fully unpack a subject and really introduce somebody and really get to know them, form a relationship with them, like you just said, you're forming a relationship with your audience. I personally, I think 20 minutes per episode might be a little short, and so that's why I have long conversations with my people, because I really want to get to know them better. I want to have a cool conversation with them, get to know what makes them tick, what makes them think, things like that. And, to go back to the book example, I don't pick up a book and read the whole thing in one sitting. I'm going to pause. I'm going to go do my things. I'm actually going to let some of that information marinate, and then I'm going to come back to it later. And that's exactly what I do with podcasts. When I'm listening to a long one, like the one with Elon Musk that we were talking about, I'm thinking about all the stuff that he said earlier, and it's still in my brain. And then later he's going to go back in my brain and start telling me new shit. And so if you really want to get in people's heads and really ingrain some info into them, yeah, you might not capture everybody. Your show will not be for everyone. That's just the bottom line. But the people that are your core audience that love your shit, they're going to be wanting more and more and more. There's some podcasts that I do that are an hour, and people comment back and they're like, dude, why was that one so short? I wanted to hear more. It's crazy.
That's so true, yeah.
So anyways, that was my little rant on that.
No, I get it. The big key there is knowing who you're talking to and knowing what their desires are and speaking to that. And a lot of it has to be kind of looking at it from their end, what would I like? Because then that's something that you would like to make. Raul Vega, I got to listen to that episode, by the way, with Mr. Bumblebiz.
Dude, Raul works for Hans Zimmer, the guy that
that's so epic.
Yeah, it's freaking sweet.
So what's cool about Hans Zimmer is because deadmau5 was my idol way back in the day. He's the reason I started making music, and he's kind of doing what I wouldn't say he's doing what Dead Mouse is doing, but like they involve so much like technology as far as like analog setups into their thing, and it's so cool to watch because like that's the cool. Like to me, like I love synthesizers and like what you can do. Like
Yeah.
I
Dude, that's
like
what
in my
Raul does.
mind.
He creates. Raul's like, oh shit, we're talking about me. No, but Raul he makes like he makes like digital instruments for Hans to play. So like he'll go and record like weird sounds and shit, and then like basically turn them into like MIDI files and like a MIDI instrument that like Hans can then go like make music with, which is freaking
Dude,
sweet.
I'm gonna have to dive into that episode.
Yeah, definitely do it.
Because
Raul's like, damn, they're talking about me now.
it's funny because man, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, you were saying like analog synths and all that stuff. You like really respect them.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So in my mind, I think of like, what if Beethoven or Mozart were alive today, dude? They would destroy with electronic music, dude. Because there's no limits as to how much you can synthesize it, how much you can change a waveform. Like you can like they just had a piano. Like that's it.
So true, man. So true. Yeah, and that's actually this pertains to podcasting too. I'm gonna relate it. My friend Alan Gannett, I did a podcast with him. It was a really short one, actually. I think it was like the shortest one I've done. But he wrote a book called The Creative Curve, and in the book he talks about like what, yeah, and he talks about like what creativity is, and like because creativity, like what is it? How do you get it? How do you have it? And you can actually like cultivate creativity, and basically like creativity when it comes to making a podcast, it is like an art form, you know, like it is a creation. And basically when you're creating something, it has to have one foot in the past and one foot in the future. Like it has to have one foot in the existing world and one foot in the novel and the non-existent. Like if you went back to Beethoven times and showed them dubstep, they wouldn't even know what it is. But since we've evolved and like dubstep was like an evolution on like heavy metal music and like experimental bass music and stuff, like each layer is like, how far can we keep pushing this new thing? And so if you just introduce like that new thing too quickly, it can be a little bit too much for people and it won't resonate unless they can have something to cling on to that resonates with them still. So from a podcasting point of view, you've got to create a new show that's different than other people have heard of. Like for me, that was like, if you like the style of like Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, Gary Vee, that kind of stuff, but you also maybe want to hear from some like somewhat a little more normal people or like younger people. That's another thing. Like a lot of my guests are like around my age. And so you kind of just take a concept that's already existing and just twist it a little bit. Same thing happened with like Snapchat. They took photo sharing. Every social media app has photo sharing, but they introduced that one little extra feature of disappearing photos and it took off. It was that one thing that they needed. So with your podcast, if you're trying to come up with a podcast or whatever, like see how you can take a pre-existing idea and just like tweak it a little bit. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel, just make it better or make it your own, you know?
Yeah. And me coming from like producer world, like I used to produce electronic music. I still do. I have a new track coming out soon. I'll send you that after. But the people who it's sick, dude. I used Alan. You know Alan Watts?
Yes, the Afro dude.
I sampled him for the track, bro. It's so sick. Like you haven't heard of this before.
That's sick.
But the people who usually blow up the quickest are people who do remix contests or people who are collabed because there's power in like just like twisting something, just like you said. Like, and it's usually the people who are on the leading edge, which kind of like create a trend. Like you're talking about dubstep, like. Dubstep single-handedly was like pushed by Skrillex. Like when he released Scary Monster and Nice Sprites, he pushed out something that no one. And I remember that moment when he released that, I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yep. It's like when you freaking first like heard about 9/11. Where were you when you first heard Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites?
Oh, dude, I remember too, bro. I remember
it
like,
too, man.
Like my best albums. That's crazy, dude. So we have a love for electronic music. It sounds like.
Definitely. I'm wearing my Tomorrowland shirt right now.
Awesome. My brothers went there. There was the one in Europe. Where was it again?
Belgium. Yes.
Yeah. They were there.
That was actually Kyle's question. He asked it earlier. He said, "What was my favorite thing of my Euro trip?"
Yeah, I missed that.
I went to both weekends at Tomorrowland this year, so that was dope. It's my third year, so that was dope. But also, but to answer the rest of that question, I think. Most oh man, it's hard to say favorite. I'll share two other quick ones. The other was being center court at Wimbledon. I snuck on to center court at Wimbledon, which is freaking crazy.
Dude, that's the best. You sneak into big places. I have a story about that too.
Yeah. So I snuck in with my brother. And then we also went to this crazy festival called the Goodwood Festival of Speed. It's a car festival. And that was absolutely nuts because I love cars and I got to see some of the coolest cars in the world. So that was nuts too. So yeah, those are my favorite things.
One place that I snuck into, and dude, this is like sneaking into places that are big. I don't know about your experience, but for me, it's like a 2 hour chore. Like you got to like figure out where the security's at, figure out how to hop fences. So I did it in Thailand. I don't know if you heard of the law. I forget what it's called now. Damn it. Where they do the Lantern Festival, the biggest one in the world.
Yeah.
So it's like in this college park, like in the middle of like a forest. So I was like literally like within trees, like in the middle of the night. We got front row. Like I was literally like sitting next to like huge basketball players and stuff. Like I think Chris Bosh was there and all these people. And it was like the most like epic experience. I got photos of it too. It was the most epic experience. But all right. I love this, dude. We're getting into some cool topics. But let me see what else I want to ask you here. You said you're for books. What are your favorite books that you like to read? Like what would you say the number one book that changed your life is?
Rich Dad Poor Dad for sure.
Gotcha.
Rich Dad Poor Dad was the one that like I was reading it right around the time when I dropped out of college, and it was just all those like lessons that they were just in the book he basically explains that he had a dad that was like a teacher or whatever, and his dad wasn't rich, but he wasn't like poor or anything, but he calls him his poor dad. And then he's got a friend's dad who is like an entrepreneur and like taught him over like a summer about like all kinds of stuff about owning your own business and stuff like that. And I just realized I was in college like learning from my professors that like ultimately like I hate to be like this, but like they didn't have what I wanted to have, like they're professors, like, and nothing against professors or educators or anything, because I think it's a super important job. Like I love learning, I also love teaching, like, but just not in that formal sense, And so like I just looked around and I was like, this isn't really where I want to be, and that was like a huge catalyst for that. It's pretty basic, pretty easy read. I actually listened to the audio book a couple of times. So that was like the one that changed my life, to be honest. Like, because honestly, we wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for that, because I probably would have just like stayed in college and done whatever.
That book affected me a lot too. So Joe Rogan changed my life. He got me into like plant medicines for a while. So he would always talk about ayahuasca with him and Aubrey Marcus. And I was like, I gotta try this. So I went to Peru for 5 days and I did it. And I brought one book with me, and it was Rich Dad Poor Dad. Because one of my intentions was like, I want to start creating my own. This was like 3 years ago. I was like, I want to create my own business and like do something where, because this is right when I dropped out of college. I was like, I want to do something where I don't. Because I the same reason I dropped out of college was because what you're saying, like I'm listening to people who aren't doing what I want to do. They're just like teaching the books and the whole school education system. I'm not going to talk about that now, but that's not the type of people you want to learn from. I feel like some careers, yeah. If you want to become a doctor, lawyer, go for it.
Yeah, and what's even crazier? The podcast I just dropped today. I did a podcast with this couple. They own a business where they help people with their online courses, and the online course market has exploded over the past few years. And a lot of marketers, they consider a course to be successful if the refund rate is low and they sell a lot. But typically the average for online courses, the completion rate to go all the way through is only like 3 to 5%, which is insane. So like stupid low. And in the podcast, we talked about how Carrie, who is a doctor of education, like she's literally has like her EDD, her doctor of education, and she has like 3 college degrees, and talking about how there's proven methods where you can take your course and do certain things to it and, tweak it and whatever. And you can turn that like, super low completion rate into like super high, even in like 96% completion rates and stuff like that. But the craziest thing that she said in that podcast was she said that she is not going to be telling her kids to go to college. She's actually not. She doesn't want them to go to college, and that's coming from someone who's a doctor. And she has 3. She has 3 degrees. No, I think she just is like saying after high school, like don't go. Like there's no need to go to college because there's other. You can figure it out. Like that was kind of her main thing was. There's so many resources out there that are way cheaper, shorter, and more effective. And I just think it's an antiquated system. I don't want to get into a rant so bad on that too, because people get butthurt as well. But
Can you hear me, by the way? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I thought my mic plugged out for a second. Yeah, I read an article from a Harvard professor, and he said in 10 to 15 years, 40% of colleges are going to be out of business.
Yeah, I mean it's a business at the end of the day, and college is not what it used to be, and it doesn't serve a purpose anymore, as much of a purpose as it did.
No,
And
because it's not providing value to the consumer. There's no refund policy. There's no like.
Yeah, and my friend Maya, she was on my podcast. I keep saying all this stuff that people were on my podcast. My friend Maya, who's on my podcast, she talked about how on when she wants to learn something, she either wants to do it cheaply and it might take a little bit longer, or do it expensive and go the fast track. And college is the worst of those. You're doing super expensive and you're doing the slow track. It takes forever and it takes a ton of time. You don't make any money during it and you actually lose a ton. And she's like, I'd rather just go like, if you're going to take all that money that you're going to invest in your college education and you took it and like, you know, brought it to somebody who's like a leader in the field that you want to go into and was like, yo, teach me, you know, whatever it takes, all that stuff. Like there's ways that you can infiltrate yourself into a system like that. And, you know,
yeah,
however, or go to take online courses that are proven to bring results or whatever, you know? And,
yeah,
you know, I don't necessarily want to hate on college so hard, but you know, it's hard for me to support it when like I said, there's
everything
it's a fast track and it's
100% true.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in the world. I don't know if you know ClickFunnels, the software where it's like you build funnels and such.
You mentioned right?
Yeah. So I'm kind of in that world, and you know, Steven Larson, who was his lead funnel builder for 2 years, he's one of my clients now, and
nice.
People make insane amount of money, like
totally,
like their funnels like 6 figures a month easy, millions a month easy. And what I realize in their courses is, and this is maybe your guest that you had on, she explained this. The ones that are successful, they have a success path, so they give you do this first, then do this, and then they don't just throw information overload. Because I've seen courses like that where it's just information overload, and it's like if you haven't already achieved success and you don't know how to decipher the code, you're gonna like it's gonna give you like a brain fog. So I think that's the key with online courses.
Yeah, and like she's a doctor and she's done tons of studies on like proven methods of learning and all that stuff. So like with their clients, they do really deep dives on all that stuff to make sure it's following her proven methods and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of laughable how bad some of these courses are, but what else?
Yeah. But that's true. I mean, you'll find them on, I remember like one of the first courses I took was how to like sell on eBay and Amazon, and I made some money from it. So, but I also took a lot of shitty course. Like I remember this now, dude. One of my because I was desperate. This is when I first dropped out. I'm like, I'm gonna try everything. It was a course on how to sell balloons to local business owners. So I was literally going to like local business owners and selling them like pre-made balloons. Like, hey, you can sell this. It was like for cake shops. Like, hey, these are birthday balloons and these are anniversary balloons. And I was selling them for like $10 a pop. But that's obviously not scalable or something that you want to do. But it's funny. William asks, or he says, if you really want to learn, you must beat the concrete formula talk to. Man, I don't know what that means, dude. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get
people. Hook 100, sell 10. So I think what he's trying to say is you got to talk to 1,000. And then from those 1,000, you're going to end up hooking 100 and then you're going to sell 10. Like
it's a numbers game.
It's totally a numbers game. And that's kind of like, and the catch is having proven scripts, you know, like you have like, you know, you have proven ways of going about it. Like, I totally agree. Same thing goes with podcasting, actually. You know, it's like, you got to have promo to get people to listen to your podcast, right? Like people aren't just going to like, they're probably just not just going to randomly discover you on, you know, the iTunes or whatever, because it's so saturated now. So you're going to have to be findable. And then out of those 1,000 people that find you, like maybe 100 will follow you or whatever. And then maybe like 10 will listen to it. You know, it's all a numbers game. So you just got to cast a wide net.
Yeah. So I want to ask, because your interviews are like, they're like, it makes you like, you listen to the whole episode and you don't even know you're like, it's that long of an episode because you like have a natural flow. So, I mean, I'll tell you my method. I love like, so when I usually start an interview and like kind of what I'm doing now, I have a few questions or topics I want to address, but I use some of them as like fallback questions, and I just like to let the conversation go to where it can go naturally, because then you're getting into like current topics and events and such. How do you like to like lead your interviews or like your shows?
I would say mine is very similar. At one point I tried to do written notes, and it threw me off more than anything, because I was too focused on trying to hit the points, and like, sometimes I would try to jot some stuff down or whatever. Sometimes it is helpful if I have something that comes to mind and I don't want to forget it. I'll like jot it down quickly or whatever.
I
But
have a bad memory, so I have to do that.
yeah, and so that's kind of necessary for me sometimes. But I mean, to be honest, man, like I kind of just go in there with a few kind of set topics. Typically, I'm asking them to be on my show for a pretty specific reason. Maybe it's their business, maybe it's just their cool adventures or whatever. Maybe they have a cool story. So I'll kind of like try to lead with that, and then we'll kind of just let the conversation flow. Some of them, I feel like I could talk to them for 12 hours. Some of them, it kind of feels like we're running out of stuff in an hour, so we cut it. So I'm not too. In the beginning, I was a little too focused on trying to actually make them long. I think they were just too long on purpose. Like I was trying too hard to make them long. Because again, I was trying to emulate like Joe and stuff, who has like 3-hour podcasts, and sometimes it's just you'll even see sometimes with him, he'll cut them short at like an hour. He's not feeling it, or he's got to run or whatever. Like it just happens. So that's kind of how I go about it too.
Also, I think what's different with your situation is you're not like is 100% of your podcast like in person?
100%, yeah.
That's
which is kind of crazy.
That is amazing.
So this is weird for me.
I know, dude. I feel like I should have like got a ticket to it. You're in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
I need to go to Atlanta, dude. Meet up, do a mastermind with you, Ryan. I know a lot of people in Atlanta, actually.
Dude, yeah. And that's actually one of my goals for the podcast from the beginning was I wanted to, build this up so it was like a catalyst for me to be able to like travel more and see my friends all over the world. Like Xavier, he just commented, I met him at Tomorrowland a couple of years ago. He lives in Canada. So like if I, wanted to do a podcast in Canada or whatever, I have, I can go stay with him or I can go hang out with him or whatever. Like we can do podcasts. Like, I want to create that network of people that I have like around the world. So I can like also be, doing cool stuff and keeping my real life up, because when you don't do anything fun, you don't have anything to talk about either. Like if all you do is just record podcasts with people, you have nothing to relate to them about. You're not doing cool stuff. Like you can't butt in and share your experiences. Like it's just boring. So
that's how you build connection. Yeah, the stories. Like to me, stories is how you kind of get in people's minds because then you're activating their brain. They're forming images and like you get in their memory.
Yeah, and that was actually something I was gonna mention earlier when we were talking about vetting people. Is since all of mine are in person, it's harder for someone that doesn't give a shit about you or your podcast to come meet you in person if they don't care. If they're just trying to easily, quickly get on your podcast on a quick Skype call and it takes very minimal effort on their end, they can kind of just check that box off and be like, okay, cool, that's 1,000 more people that know about me now. But I don't want people that are just trying to use me, like I'm trying to like build like a cool community too. Like I actually want my guests to like be friends and stuff. Like, we're all cool people. I invited you guys all to be on my show for a reason. Like, why shouldn't we all be friends and be chill with each other and hang out? And actually that was one thing I did for my, I hit 100 uploads. And it was also my birthday because I launched it on my birthday. So I had this giant party where I invited all of my previous guests that were in town. I invited all my friends. We had like over 100 people show up. It was so freaking dope.
Did you document that?
Sorry?
Did you document that?
Yeah, like we have pictures and stuff. Like I did a pretty poor job of like actually documenting it because I was more focused on everyone there having a good time and like actually talking to people. And it was kind of stressful because like I was trying to make sure that the venue we were at was cool with us and like all of my friends were meeting each other because a lot of them didn't know each other. They were meeting each other for the first time. But I did have my friend who's a photographer like take some pictures while he was there and stuff. So I have like pictures from it. But yeah, it was freaking dope because it was so cool how like everyone that was a guest like was able to kind of meet each other and stuff. And like it was just awesome. I love community. I love
that is like huge because then like you're creating like man, that's big because then all your guests commingle and then like it's all kind of ties back to you. So then that helps you.
Yeah, dude. It was like a win-win for everybody. It was so fun. It was awesome. Like it was honestly probably one of the best nights of my life. I got a little bit too drunk, I will admit, towards the end. It was also my birthday, so I was having a lot of fun. But
that's big.
Yeah, the vibes were amazing, dude. It was so fun.
So I have a quick question.
Yes.
I kind of feel like you're going to the route, and I'm sure you agree that eventually you're gonna have a studio set up and you're gonna be live and almost like kind of Joe Rogan or Tom Bilyeu or Ben Shapiro. How far away do you think that is?
Funny enough, we're building it out right now. So my friend one of my buddies who has turned into like a video client as well. He was on my podcast too. I'm not going to say it publicly just because I want to kind of keep it secret, but he's one of my friends, and he told me, he's like, dude, I kind of have like a spare room in my apartment, and like, how would you feel about us making like a studio where we can build out like basically this extra bedroom and turn it into like a more permanent thing, and make videos out of there and make podcasts and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, dude, I'm so in. So we're building that out now. It's going to kind of be a gradual rollout. In the beginning, it's pretty much going to stay my exact same setup, except for we're just going to have a more permanent place to record and have like more of a, I guess, consistency to it, and like a cool place to invite people to, and it'll have that kind of studio vibe. And then eventually it'll kind of start being more, bringing in the more high-end microphones and getting a more dope setup, and maybe hiring somebody who's going to be kind of my audio guy and helping out Jamie, if you will, from the Joe Rogan podcast, stuff like that, And so actually that's going to be coming up very, very soon. So very excited.
I love that. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you see Tom Bilyeu. He has some epic, and a lot of his content like has gone viral, like just because his setup and his makeup. It's so cool.
That's what I will actually say is I don't think the video podcasts and the live podcasts are as important for people actually watching the whole thing as it is for sharing clips and making virality. Like, that's the biggest thing. I discover podcasts because I'll watch a 5-minute clip and I'm like, I want to listen to that whole thing. Because for me, podcasts is like me absorbing the information and like, kind of hanging out with these people almost. I want to feel like a fly on the wall. I want to hang out with them. But I might not have 3 hours to sit at my phone or sit at my computer and just straight up watch them, because that's boring. But like sitting in my car or whatever, that's, I always listen to podcasts when I'm doing other stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to chop this one up, dude, because you dropped there's some awesome segments into this episode. So, so we're going to wrap up here really quick.
Yeah,
but
William asked a question. He said, did I have a partner? I just wanted to answer that real fast. I did not, but I didn't actually mention this. This is part of my origin story, I guess you could say, is before my friend asked me to be on his podcast, my friend Owen, who's been a guest on my podcast like 3 times now, he and I wanted to start a podcast. I was like, yo, we should start a podcast. Let's just like record it on my phone and like test things out and like see how it goes. And like, we both just had like very different visions of what that would look like. And we actually recorded one test episode. It's still on SoundCloud. I think it's trash. We recorded it on like an iPhone, and we like talked over each other, and like, we didn't really know what we were doing. And then basically we both like listened to it, and without even having to like say, hey, let's not do this anymore, we just both kind of knew like, yeah, we're not going to do this again. And so after I kind of experimented that one time with having a partner, and then also going on my friend's show and seeing how he kind of ran things, and all my favorite other shows didn't have partners. Like, it was just one guy typically. So I went with just going solo.
Yeah. The co-host, there's like pros and cons to it. It also depends on mainly your personality type. Cause I know one podcast where he's kind of in the entrepreneur space. He's a very boring guy, but he's super smart. So his co-host is like a super, like, he does all the jokes, and he's more like a fun guy. So it's like,
Neil deGrasse Tyson, is that what you're talking about?
No. This guy's like in digital marketing.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's not boring, but he also has like a comedian as his co-host, which is funny.
Yeah, which is genius. And their podcast has been high up there for a while. I'm
blowing
pretty sure.
Up. Right? Blowing up. Yeah, I actually don't. I've only listened to like a couple episodes, but I know I always see it on like the top charts and stuff.
I used to watch it way back in the day, like on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
More the video.
That's how it goes, though. That's how it goes with a lot of shows. Like, things come and go, and that's why also I feel like you shouldn't get bummed if your like views are going down and stuff on your podcast. Like, it might just be one of those seasons, man. Like, it might just be like people are just listening to other stuff right now, and like, they'll come back. Like, don't worry. People stress too much about the numbers. I've started looking at the numbers less and less and less, because like because in my head, if there's an audience, I know there's an audience, but I don't need to look like, oh wow, like 200 less people listened last week from this week. Like, it doesn't really matter, because like, those episodes are going to be up forever. Like, who knows? That one might end up going viral like 3 years later. Like, who knows? Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, the key is consistency, guys. So that's the main thing. You're creating a database of you, which is awesome. Your great grandkids are going to see your work, dude.
Say that, dude. I think about that all the time. Like, how crazy will it be if
Gary Vaynerchuk talks about that too. Like, to our future generation, like, we're gonna look like the first person.
Dude, that's whoa. That's so
yeah. Like 500 years from now, because we're the only people are documenting this. Like my mom and dad a little bit, but mainly us. Like we're living on it, you know.
So true, man. So true.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up here, dude? Or anything you want to share? Like, you know, people follow you. Obviously, follow his podcast. If you want to hear all the guests he talked about, like, listen to his stuff, dude. I love it.
Thanks, man. Dude, I really appreciate the fact that you actually listen to some of the episodes. Like, that's dope. A lot of times when you get on interviews with people and stuff, like, they don't even listen, and you can tell because they don't know anything about your show, you know?
Dude, and, I want to learn from everyone, you know?
I love that.
And I'm actually like, I have more of the chat episode to listen to. I got like halfway. So that guy's a really interesting cat.
Dude, that guy is so interesting. Yeah. Crazy. Right. But yeah, that's what I wanted to, yeah. Like, obviously, you know, if you guys want to listen to my podcast, you can, you know, go to my website. It's just my name.com. But yeah, I mean, that's really it, man. I don't got much to plug, just mainly. Yeah. If honestly, this felt like one of my podcasts. So if you like, great conversations and you don't hate the sound of my voice, then you'll probably like my podcast.
Yeah, dude, I love this. I mean, I'm learning a lot from you and your podcast, to be honest.
Thanks,
so just thank you, bro, for everything that you're doing.
Yeah, and also people should use my gifts.
Yeah, I'm about to, dude. I was like gonna say, like, to wrap up, like, you need to create a Bird Gang gift, dude.
That would be dope, dude. I bet you dude, I should reach out to Bird and get him to pay me to make some custom gifts.
Hell yeah, dude. They're
custom
not
Bird
yeah, they could be pushing.
Dude, there's that market. Dude, like, big things are coming in the gift game. That is my super big side hustle right now.
I'm gonna be digging into that tonight. Actually, I'm gonna sign up. How long did that process take to get approved?
Can't remember. I think I was in Spain when I applied. Like, I was literally just on my phone. I made like a little account. So that must have been 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. And then like I got approved like maybe 12 days ago. I don't know. So it took like a couple weeks.
Gotcha. Yeah. We got to get Ryan viral, dude. We got to get that beard viral.
Yes, for sure.
So cool, man. Guys, thanks for tuning in. If you made it this far, give us a hashtag Showtime, hashtag Bird Gang. You had to see the beginning of the episode to understand that, actually.
But if you're on the replay squad, what up?
Yeah. Give us a replay squad, guys. Hashtag replay squad.
And also, if you have any other comments, like, you can always leave them in the comments down below. And we'll be able to see them. I can answer them afterwards anyway. So if you're watching on replay squad,
guys, you can answer them later. Take advantage of this, man. This guy's super smart. And yeah, we're gonna wrap up there. And remember, guys, your legacy starts now. Peace out.
Boom.